You guys ready to introduce yourselves? Okay, hang on.
Okay. Hello. My name is Elijah. I'm a freshman here, and I'm from Philly.
Oh, man.
I'm Jess. I'm a sophomore, and I'm also from outside of Philly.
Whoa. All right. Whoa. I can't believe you're a freshman and a sophomore. Like, oh, my God. Okay, so what you're doing today is, it's cool. What you're going to do today is cool. It's an exploration, but it's just an exploration, okay? Don't feel the pressure that you should be feeling, but it's cool. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to do like a little mini lecture. I'm going to talk about some things. And you can use your phones to take some notes. If something just pops in your mind that you feel is really important, do that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to have to explain what I just did, okay? And the reason we're going to do this is because I have the idea that in order to understand sociology, you have to understand what I'm about to talk about today, okay? Like, you have to. And it is one of the most pivotal points of argumentation between people who have a sociological perspective and other people. And it's deeply troubling to me when I hear people misrepresent a sociological perspective, which would include pretty much everybody in this room, because you're going to take some of these ideas that we're going to talk about today, and you're going to talk with other people about them. Well, unless you're brain dead and you don't care about anything, then you won't talk to anybody. But if you're not brain dead, you're going to talk with other people about these ideas, and you're going to misrepresent because you're not going to fully understand. And as a result of that, what's going to happen is you're going to come to argumentations with people because they're not going to understand. You're not going to say it correctly, and they're not going to understand. And then they're going to fight with you, and you're going to feel like, oh my God, Sam made it so clear, or I didn't. Maybe I made it so unclear. I don't know. But Sam made it so clear, but it makes sense if you just were there, you would understand it. But it's not how it works, right? Now, the thing is, I've been thinking about this stuff for 40 years, and you're going to get 10 or 15 minutes, and that's it. So the bar is really low. All I expect you to do is just kind of step over it and give it your best shot, okay, to be able to reproduce what it is that I'm saying. Wait. Okay, we good? Now, I'm going to also say the following. I think what I'm going to say today, I think for those of us who like to think about human behavior, how and why people do think and say the things that they do and think and say, I think what I'm going to say today is the single most important thing that you could hear to begin to build your foundation of understanding, okay? There are a lot of fields of study that are really, really important. But in the world of sociology, what I'm going to say is the foundational idea, and that if you get this, if you really understand it, you will understand a lot about human beings and human behavior, okay? So, some of it we've already talked about, and now we're gonna come back. So can you go? Let's go to the next slide. All right. So listen. I'm going to kind of turn my back to you. I'm going to talk to them now, all right? In the world of race and ethnic relations and global relations and cultural relations, what we're trying to do is figure out how and why people do the things they do. Why are different cultures? Why do some cultures do one thing and not another? Why do some people act certain ways? What's happening? What's going on? This is what we're trying to do all the time. Okay? And this class, in many ways, is trying to assess the differences in the behavior and thinking of people of different racial and ethnic groups or ancestry groups, right? What is it about Africans, right? What is it about people from the GCC countries, right? Arab Muslims, as we talked about last class, right? What is it about white people, European people compared to American white people? Like, what's going on? We talk about Latinos a lot. We talk about Jews. We talk about Gentiles. We talk about Muslims. We talk about Buddhists, Chinese, etc. And we make these generalizable statements, and we make these claims, and we try to have an understanding, or we say whatever we want to say. But in essence, all the time what we're doing is we're trying to get at causality. We want to know what causes certain groups of people to be one way and other groups of people to be another way. And in the world, we're doing our best to try to figure it out. Okay? We're doing our best to try to figure it out without being judgmental, right? Without saying that one group is better than another. I mean, not all of us are doing that, but people like me are, right? I'm really trying to assess different things about people without saying that one is better than another, really just trying to understand. Okay? So that's what this class is about. And everything that we've talked about thus far is trying to understand causality. And if you notice, when I bring students to the front and I'm asking them questions and I'm, whatever it is that we're doing, my thing, what I'm trying to do is understand causality. Dude. So in understanding causality, there's two factors that are absolutely important. One is the things that we decide to do ourselves. The motivation that comes from within. This kind of sense that I, Sam, am this entity inside of this body, and I have agency. Meaning I have the power to think for myself, or I have the power to act according to my thoughts. I have the power inside of me to make things happen. Like, it's really about me. It is this kind of sense of agency, personal agency, that my brain controls my body, and my brain can make any number of things happen. Okay? On the other side are all of these things that I come up against in the world. I come up against where I've grown up. I come up against the time in which I've grown up. In this classroom, I teach in a certain way because it's so big. And I teach in a certain way because I have technology, or because I'm white, or because I'm a man, or because I'm an American, or because I grew up in the working class, or because whatever reason, all the things that got me to college, that got me into graduate school, that led me to be here, all of this complex influence of external factors. And in the world of sociology, what we're always doing is we're trying to understand this complex influence of external factors. The personal choice matters for us, right? Personal choice matters, As sociologists, we're interested in the matrix of influential factors and forces. That's what we study. That's what we do. So I'm really not that, in the last class, the Arab Muslim students who were up here talking, I'm really not that interested in them as individuals. I'm really not interested in what they think as individuals. Even though I'm asking them questions, I'm like, yeah, but I'm not interested how you perceive it. What I want to know is, what about all the other people who are walking in your shoes? Like, that's what I do as a sociologist. I study culture, I study groups. So if you go back to that class, you're going to notice me asking them questions that really pertain to all of the people in their lives, the people around them, the people who identify in similar ways as they do. Okay? Got it? So what we do as sociologists is we try to identify causality in groups. In the moment we begin identifying causality in groups, meaning that I'm going to make a statement about, let's go to the last class, Arab Muslims. The moment I start making a statement about all Arab Muslims, what it sounds like, what it appears, is that, oh, I'm saying that they don't have agency, that they act the way they do, they think the way they think, their culture is the way it is because they're Arab Muslims, not because they make any choices. So sociologists seem like we're taking power away from agency. Okay, got it? So because I'm not just like you all, right? If you, like those of you who are in fraternities and sororities, I'm not interested in you. I'm interested in fraternities and sororities. I want to know what the group of people who are in fraternities and sororities on average do and on average think. That's where I enter in. That's the fascinating thing for me. But the moment I start making claims about, oh, well, you know what? Well, here's what it seems to be, that on average, people in fraternities do X. Whatever it is, they do X. But maybe you don't do X. But it doesn't matter. I'm looking at averages. I'm making these generalizations. I'm making these statements about people and fraternities, which is not true of every single person, but that's not what sociology is. And once I make that step, man, it's like a black hole, right? I step into this like quicksand of like, oh, here's what happens when you join a fraternity. It sounds like what I'm saying, this is important, okay? It sounds like what I'm saying is that people who join fraternities, that Sam is now talking about, they give up their agency. They're no longer making decisions. They're just acting as part of fraternities. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just interested in the parts of people that are motivated by the same things that other people in their groups are motivated by. Got it? It's like I'm just interested in this group. What happens? And there's not a lot you can say because the group is made up of individuals. It's made up of individuals, and each individual has their own mind, but at the same time, when you put that group together, you go like, man, you know what? There's something about young men at Penn State who live in fraternities that's different than young men at Penn State who don't live in fraternities. The way they act, the way they think, the way they do this, the way they do that. Sometimes that's not the case. But when you find that thing, you say like, oh, okay, wow, that's kind of interesting. It doesn't mean that they don't have individual ideas or agencies, but it just means that's the thing we're focusing on, okay? So, it sounds like what sociologists are doing is we're withdrawing agency from people. We're saying like, yeah, you know, poor people who are poor, are less likely to go to college, and because for a wide range of reasons. But you might say, no, listen, everybody can go to college. Or people who are poor are more likely to drop out of high school than people who are not poor. And you might say, well, dropping out of high school is an agency decision. That's something that somebody has to decide. Like one day you decide, I'm dropping out of high school. There's nothing about being poor. It doesn't matter if you're poor. Stay in high school, stay in school, do whatever you have to do. But the sociologist says, nah, there's something that happens. There's something that happens. And I'm really sure what it is. Well, we can throw some hypotheses out about the causes, of the specific causes of that. But there's something that goes on that people, are more likely to drop out. And what people who listen to sociologists say, it's like, but wait, but you're saying they're not responsible for dropping out. Because you're saying that it's their poverty that leads them to drop out. And dude, this is really important. But the sociologist says, no, listen. The poverty is among that influence of external factors that shapes human behavior. And that we think that we're in control. We think we're free. We think we're acting in all the ways that we imagine that we are, and we're not. Like, for example, I don't know, I saw a group of white sorority women gathering a few weeks ago, and they all had the same uniform on. I mean, it was jeans and a white shirt, and they all had the same hair, and I'm like, yo, man, how the fuck? Like, they didn't get together and say, like, to be part of our sorority, you got to all wear this same thing. Nobody said that. But they did, and if I asked any single one of them, they would say, no, I chose this. Like, this is what I'm choosing. I'm like, you're not choosing that. If you were choosing that, you wouldn't all look alike. It's just not random. This is like this would be as random as winning the Powerball lottery. Like, that you would just all randomly choose to wear the same thing. Like, no. And that's all of us. I woke up today and I didn't wear a dress. I wore jeans and a shirt. It's not chance that I didn't wear a dress. I didn't wear a dress because I've been socialized in a world that says, hey, dude, don't wear a dress. And if you wear a dress, it's going to be kind of awkward, but unless it's Halloween, you could wear a dress. But don't really do that. And then I just have learned to not do that. Just like many of you have learned that there's not a chance in hell that you are going to drop out of high school. You are never going to drop out of high school. That is not even an option for the all but maybe 5 or 10 of you. It's not even an option for you. It's like, well, but I could drop out, theoretically speaking. No, you couldn't. You couldn't. You can't even envision it. It's not even possible. And the fact that it's not even possible for you to truly envision it and walk, you can envision it, but you would never in a million years do it. And the reason, and it's just as impossible as it would be for the person who drops out, who grows up in a certain neighborhood with a certain group of people in a certain area, it's just as impossible for them to not imagine dropping out. For them to imagine going to college at Penn State University. You think, of course I go to college at Penn State University. Like, of course I would go to college. But can you imagine that there are people who, there's almost zero chance that they could envision themselves as going to Penn State University. You are just as unfree as they are. The vast majority of the choices you make are not even choices. You don't even know. You have no idea how unfree you are because you're being shaped by this life around you. Just like me not wearing a dress. Okay? So in the world of sociology, we're really fascinated by causality, and we have to always put this question of responsibility on the table. Because it sounds all the time like sociologists are telling people they're not responsible for their behavior. Because I'm looking at you all and I'm like, yeah, you weren't going to drop out of college. You're never going to drop out. And you're not responsible for that. You were conditioned and socialized and brought along in this world that was not even going to be a possibility for you. And you're not responsible for that. It's beyond your control. Except that you could drop out. So, all right, so you have a little bit of possible responsibility. But honestly, I don't know. And the kid that drops out, and then we look at, and we're like, well, that kid dropped out. He should have stayed in school. He made that decision. Now he really effed his life up, screwed his life up. Like he really should have stayed in school and done whatever. And you have me as a sociologist saying like, yeah, but that kid's about as free as you are to make that decision. And so this is the thinking of a sociologist. And it's really fascinating to live in this world. And we're always dealing with the fact that people are saying like, hey, you're telling people they're not responsible. It's like, no, really, in a way, I'm telling people that their decisions are being made by things outside of them, okay? Got it? And in the end, yeah, you got to say you're responsible. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's really interesting. Got it? This is what we wrestle with all the time. Because for me, personally, every decision I make, I take responsibility for it. Even like the worst ones that I'm like, oh, why did I do that? That was like the dumbest thing I ever did. And I take responsibility for it, even though I understand oftentimes where it came from. Like I know the things that I do that are related to my working class roots. That I'm just like, yeah, if I wasn't working class, man, I wouldn't, there's no way I would do all these things. I'd be so different. But like, yeah, but I don't blame it on my working class, but I bet that helps me to understand, okay? All right, Mom. So now, are you ready? Who wants to go first? You want him to go first? Oh my God. Okay, Leah, can you take, Jessica, can you have Jessica go out in the hallway? Take a chair out there. You can take your phone, but don't listen to class. You can study your notes. Dude, do you want to sit there or you want to sit up here? What's going to be most comfortable? I like this chair. You want the chair? All right, Mom. So now, Elijah. So Elijah's now going to take what I just said, and he's going to explain something. Okay? Can you go to the next slide? All right. Remember these guys, the carjackers? So you're talking to your friends. And remember the folks in the streets of Kensington? Okay? Now you got to take what I just talked about and you got to explain. Start with the carjackers, those guys. And you want to explain how a sociologist would, you want to discuss how a sociologist would explain their behavior.
Okay. So, a person who carjacks or does something similar, for example, the people in the picture, I guess like a sociologist would like explain that by saying like, regardless if a community looks at them like it is 100% their choice to steal that car or do what they did.
Dude, hold it like that.
Hold it like this?
Yeah.
That's better? Okay. Yeah. So regardless if like society sees them and it's like, oh, that's your choice, you did that. I I guess a sociologist would say, like, they were influenced by external factors, where they grew up, or the types of people they hang out with. And growing up and seeing things like that, or having people in their immediate circle that have done things like that or similar, and have either prevailed or failed, subconsciously they're influenced to do it regardless if they made that decision or not. And then, I mean, obviously they're still held responsible, but I guess like a sociologist wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, it's 100% their fault because they saw it, they've experienced it, it might have happened to them, and just seeing them do something that they're surrounded by isn't their choice. Yeah.
Okay. Now, dude, wait, you're a freshman?
Yeah.
You mean you just started up here a few weeks ago?
A few weeks ago, yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, first off, if you're watching the video, if you're one of these know-it-all, snarky 50-year-olds, that was amazing for an 18-year-old, all right? So don't be a dick, all right? Okay, so listen. Now do it again, or keep going, and be more subtle in it. Like, because how you ended that was kind of, it's not the choice. Like, so go back to that. Go back to, like, where does choice come in? Because,
And you want me to still talk about the carjackers?
yeah, do the carjackers. Keep going.
Okay.
Just look at them, right? Like, what, the main choices. And you're from Philly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where in Philly?
I grew up in South, but I currently reside in West.
Okay. So, put yourself in the shoes of these kids, right?
Okay.
As best you can.
Yeah. I mean, I could understand, like, if they grew up, okay, like, for example, North Philly, I know that it's a pretty bad neighborhood. I used to go to school there. I went to Central. So if a person who grew up there sees that a lot, and, like, they know a lot of people who have done it, more often than not, I feel like they would be influenced to do it, regardless if it's their choice or not.
Or they're more likely to be
Yeah.
influenced to do it than,
Right.
let's say, I don't know, this dude right here, right? Than him. Okay. What help people to understand, what is that?
What is influence?
Yeah, what do you see? What do you understand that other people don't know? Because other people are going to look at these kids and they're going to be like, what's the problem? Just don't do that stuff. Like, what is it that opens that doorway that someone could say, yeah, okay, I could see that as a reasonable option for my life, that I'm going to go carjack people?
I think you got to look at it like on a more, like, if you take a positive example. For example, let's say a kid was born into a family where everyone in the family grew up, went through high school, and made it at least to college.
Yeah, went to Penn State.
Went to Penn State, sure. Let's say they grew up in that family, so therefore they also went through high school, grew up, and went to Penn State. Now,
Or aspired to go to Penn
or
State. Yep.
aspired to go
Okay,
to Penn State,
yep.
whether or not they made it in.
And then they ended up going to Ohio State.
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that, right? Regardless if they had a lot of choices of colleges, of high schools, whether or not to drop out or not. Now, you look at that, you look at the kid, you're like, oh, that's normal. You know, he had a family who went there. Of course he would want to go there. Now, look at it in the side of a carjacker. Let's say that person grew up in a community full of other carjackers.
Or people who...
Or people who aspired to carjack.
Or just were up to nefarious activities.
Nefarious activities,
Yep.
yeah, that.
And,
yeah.
and didn't see a long-term future.
Right. They
Yep.
saw fast money.
Okay.
That was acquired from doing nefarious activities.
Uh-huh.
If they grew up seeing that, then they would be more likely to be influenced by those people and conduct the same activities, which are typically nefarious.
So just like I'm influenced by other men wearing pants and shirts and not skirts
And dresses.
and dresses. So like, okay. But people don't understand that because what people think, and this is what you have to respond to, people think, but these kids could make a different decisions. Other kids make a different decision. So why can't they make the same decision? You went to school in North Philly, but you didn't fall into that crowd of people.
Yeah.
This is in D.C., by the way, but nonetheless.
Okay. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, they did have a decision. They could have chosen not to hijack the car, but it's more of a subconscious, it's like a subconscious thought of, oh, in your head it's telling you, you should do this. Other people have done it. They've made money. Why wouldn't you do it?
So the pressure.
The pressure, it's like an internal pressure influence from external factors.
So, okay, dude, nice. Okay. It's like the white women in the sororities that have the same uniform on.
Yeah.
Like nobody told them that they had to do that, but they're doing it. They're dressing in the same way.
Right.
But somebody would say, yeah, but they're not breaking the law, but these kids are breaking the law.
Right.
To which you, this aspiring sociologist, would say what?
It's the same thing. It's
Dude.
just influence.
It's the same thing. It's the influence thing. We're all being influenced by these things. Look, the sociologist, I don't want people to commit crimes, right? Like I don't want people to break the law. I don't want people to carjack. I certainly don't want to get my car carjacked, right? But what I want to do as a sociologist is understand what are the factors and forces that lead these kids to lead a certain number of kids, it is year after year after year, to make a similar kind of decision. Like what's going on in the environment? Like what's happening that the kids are making this decision? And the sociologist says, if I don't understand, this is important, if I don't understand what's leading them to make that kind of decision, if I don't understand that, then I can't stop it. If I just keep saying like, hey, other kids did it, why don't you do it? Just stop. It's like, I'm missing it. I'm not understanding what's driving them to make a decision like that. In which case, like, what good is that? That's why we sound like liberals. We sound like we're saying they're not responsible. You know what we're saying? Yeah, there's a way in which if we don't stop seeing them as fully responsible, then we'll never understand what's going on. But as individuals, they're responsible. You know what I mean? We're not going to be like, oh, you're not responsible, so you don't have to go to jail now. Like, no. Understand. It's just like I want to understand why the white sorority women are wearing their uniforms. I want to understand why kids that you went to high school with, like when you went to Central, right? Why a larger number of those kids are more likely to end up here than doing this kind of stuff than something else. Can you reframe the responsibility thing? So, like, look at the picture on the bottom with the people on drugs.
You said that's Kensington?
Yeah, that's Kensington.
I've been there a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah?
I've seen that.
It's crazy, right?
It's
So, can you explain why they are and how they are and are not responsible to the home viewing audience?
Yeah. It's kind of the same thing as the other ones, how it's like an influence, but like obviously you still have free choice. It's just like whether or not you were pushed to do it by your own subconscious. So the steps that they took to get there, they still made, so therefore they're still responsible. And what happens to them after they do it, it's still like, it falls on them. So it falls on the person, and that's like the definition of responsibility. So.
And yet, how are they not responsible? Like everyone in this classroom has shoes on.
Right.
No, you're not, it's like you're not even responsible for wearing shoes. You just wear shoes. And if you don't understand this, you don't understand sociology.
Right. So I guess that on the other hand, they wouldn't be held responsible because of the influence of seeing like so many other people doing it and like getting hooked one time, and not being able to fall out of that hole that they've like created for themselves by doing the drugs that they did.
And the hole that got created in the in something in their lives, right?
Right.
Maybe like things in their families, or things in their community, or things with their friends, or like any number of things. You know what I mean? There are also things that are happening around us all the time, and if we're not careful, then we end up in a deep struggle. Dude, all right, I'd say that was pretty good. Would you say? Dude, he gets a thumbs up from you, bro? Dude, all right, man. Nice, man. You can have a seat. Nice job, man. For an 18-year-old, dude, that's impressive. All right, Jessica. Now, hold the mic just like this. So your job. He did a terrible job, by the way. Yeah, so it'll be really easy for you to outperform him. Remember this photo?
Yeah.
Okay, so you got to explain the photo to the class. Like, you got to use what I talked about, the sociological method, the sociological way of thinking about causality. Okay. And you got to use that to explain those. Start with the kids on the left. The kids they were from DC, and they carjacked somebody. Like, I want you to explain as best you can a sociological perspective. And by the way, anything you say will be awesome.
Okay.
So there's no pressure.
I would assume that sociologists would see it as like they needed. Wait, did they take anything when they carjacked the car?
Yeah, the car.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they could have seen, or sociologists might think of it as like they needed a way of transportation.
Oh, listen, which is what a lot of kids say when they
Right.
carjack. Yeah, they don't have a car, so they're going to go steal one. Okay.
Right. They also could have used it as like a place to live.
Okay. All right. So they're going to, so go to causality. Start with, okay, nice. Good start. Start with freedom. Remember, like, we're looking at freedom, we're looking at these external factors. So, like, what?
Someone could have told them to like do it.
Like how? Like, walk through that. Like, who are they? Where do they live? What's around them? In all likelihood.
Wait, am I supposed to assume?
Yeah, you just make the assumption. Yeah, they're from a pretty poor. I assume they're from a pretty tough area of DC.
Okay. They could have like been told by someone like with more authority. I mean, I'm not saying they're like in a gang or anything, but like if they were like the leader or something, could have like told them to do that.
Okay.
So like they didn't really have a choice necessarily, even though they think that they do.
Okay. Or we think that they do.
Right.
Not that they didn't have a choice. Say that differently, because they always have a choice. But say it differently about their choices. This is listen to this, by the way. This is really, really, really important.
They were like looking at the risks and the like benefits of
Okay.
doing this, and like I guess the benefits outweighed the risks.
Okay. Yep. So absolutely cool. No, that's good. That's actually really cool. Think about the sorority women that I mentioned in their uniforms. They all look alike. Do they have a choice?
Yeah.
How much of a choice?
I mean, it really depends. If like they could have been like fined or something if they didn't necessarily wear what they were gonna wear.
Okay.
Or
Yep.
like I mean, I don't really know what they were like doing, but
Okay.
they could have like, if they were like, they could have not been allowed to do whatever they were gonna do.
Okay. And they want to fit in.
Right.
they want to fit into people around them. They want to be part of the group. And they want to make sure, they want to give their lives meaning in some way, right? Because they're just doing what they see around them, what everybody else is doing. And so like, all right, I will do this. So now go to the kids. Use that same logic to understand these kids.
I mean, I'm going back to the gang thing, but I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, assume they're not in a gang. Assume they're just kids.
Okay, people around them could have also been partaking in like activities like this, so they just wanted to like fit in with the people around them, and like they might think that it's like cool to like take a car, so
Totally.
they did that.
Okay. And just like the sorority women think it's cool to dress the way they're dressing and do what they're doing. By the way, sorority women, I'm just using you as don't take it personally. It's all good, right? We good? Are you in a sorority? Yeah. Okay, be good. It's all good. I'm not making fun. All right. Okay, so we're products of our sociological reality. So these kids are going to be products of their sociological reality, okay? So therefore, just like I'm not wearing a dress, like they're just doing what they see around themselves. But somebody would say, but they could choose otherwise. And what would you say? But they don't have to do that. They could live very differently. What would you say?
I mean, this is how like they grew up. They might not necessarily know any better.
Or they actually, or might not know any worse. For them,
Right.
like, it's awesome, right? I mean, look, yeah, exactly. So this is the hard thing, right? This is what sociology, this is where we go, this is where we go off the cliff with people. We say, look, people are products of their sociological environment. They can always act other than the way they've been largely kind of like not programmed, but like socialized to act. And we always imagine that we would act differently, right? But I wouldn't do that. And yet, we're all doing things that other people can't imagine that we would ever do. We're all doing that. And so like, how are they different from us?
I mean, they are, but they aren't. I mean, the majority of people aren't going to go carjack someone's car,
Yeah?
but they're also just humans, and it could have just been a mistake.
Or you got a lot of parents of people in this room, because, you know, a lot of you are in the upper middle class. A lot of your parents commit all sorts of white-collar crime. But, you know, they don't come home and tell you about it. They don't even know they're committing white-collar crime. They're sowing deep up to their necks in criminal activity at some fundamental level, and they don't even know it, and they wouldn't even talk about it. And the reason they do it is because in their industry, and whatever it is they're doing, everybody does that. And so it's just like, well, that's just what it is. But they don't get caught. These kids get caught, and they do the perp walk, which that's not what that is, but it shows up. But you know, your parents or your uncle or your grandparents or you, at some point, you'll never get caught. You'll just commit this criminal activity. And the rest of us won't even define it as criminal activity, which means you really win because it's criminal, but we don't define it that way. So it's like, oh, awesome. So it's very similar in that sense. What about responsibility? Are they responsible? Or to what degree are they responsible?
I mean, I think it depends on the situation, but for the most part, they are responsible. They took the initiative to take the car, so they have that type of responsibility.
To what degree are they not? Remember, here, was it an option for you to not go to college?
No.
Are you responsible for the fact that you could have said no to going to college and you didn't? You could have said no.
Right.
I mean, really, but you didn't say no because not going wasn't an option. So are you responsible, therefore?
I guess not.
in a way you're not even responsible. You're just
Yeah.
like, I was gonna go down this path. You, Jessica, we're gonna walk down this path of going to college. Didn't matter, and nothing else mattered. All the while, you're thinking, I'm making a decision about going to college. And then you get to this sociology class with this sociology knucklehead saying like, yeah, you didn't even make that decision. That decision got made for you. So how are you any different than these kids?
I mean, I didn't do anything illegal.
Okay.
But besides that, I mean, I guess there's not really that big of a difference. They could have seen it as they didn't have like the responsibility, like they might have had to take the car or something like that,
Okay.
where they didn't have any other option.
Yep. And you could have been responsible to say, you know what, mom and dad or whoever it is, I'm not going to college. I'm not doing that. I'm going to go bake croissants in Paris. Croissants. First, you have to say it like that. And once you say it like that, then you're allowed to bake them. But this is, okay, so this is sociology, right? This is where we're trying to hold responsibility. We're trying to hold this stuff in a space whereby we say, like, okay, it's true, it's all happening, and yet it's not. It's true. These kids are responsible for sure. Like, they're going to go to jail because that's the nature of it. And I, like, personally, I'm like, yeah, I don't want, until someone gets in your head to stop carjacking, I'd like you to be in jail or somewhere where they can convince you to stop doing that shit, because I don't want you carjacking anybody else. But at the same time, it's like, if we don't understand the sociological forces in play, then we can't ever have important, valuable conversations about this stuff. All right, man. Dude, you were good. That was good.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's quite good. Can we have a round of applause for Jessica? You rock. Thank you, man. God, I'm telling you. Yeah, nice job. It's hard, right? A lot of pressure. All right, man. Bro. You want to just sit on the table? All right. Dude, take a mic. Do we have any questions from the stream? We have to have questions from the stream. I would imagine people think I'm a radical liberal commie. Okay, so listen. So last class, we talked, wait.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, all right. Last class, you weren't up here last class, right?
I was in the last class. I was one of the volunteers, but
You didn't make it up?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing. Remember we were talking about haram,
Yes.
and I said, hey, is cheating haram?
Yes.
And then I gave the story of my student that said, like,
Yeah.
dude, I asked her, how many Arabs are cheating in my class? And she said, she's Arab. She's like, every single one of them. Now, I shouldn't have said that, because not every single one is cheating.
Yeah.
But I make jokes, and sometimes, you know it's a joke, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But I do make jokes. I actually used to. When I was in college, I was a stand-up comedian. And now here, I went on stage and did stand-up comedy. But now, every time I launch into anything that's reasonably stand-up like, I always get in trouble. So I just don't allow myself to let that part of my personality out. Okay, so anyway, but here's the thing. The truth is, here's the truth, that you and your fellow Khaliji country or region men and women from the Gulf are infinitely more likely to cheat than your grandparents. In your culture, Like for your grandparents in your culture, a handshake, dude, this right here, a handshake, we could exchange $1 million on the basis of that handshake, and that handshake is it. There's no legal stuff. There's nothing written down. You don't have to write it down. Your culture is a culture built on honesty.
Yeah, that's true.
Fundamentally honesty,
Yeah.
right? So like if the grandparents of all of you who are Arab were in this class, they would never, ever think about cheating.
Kinda true.
It's
Kinda
quite true.
Yeah.
But
Since,
go ahead.
since it's kind of conservative, it's kind of related to religion and how the religious they are in general. How is not committing a sin is actually kind of motivate them to not cheat. That's the main reason. Other than that, the morality code of each person is kind of, and how kind of they stick with their morals is kind of the only reason that they're likely less to cheat. That's
Okay,
the only reason.
so the question so the question I have as a sociologist,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
so the question I have for you as a sociologist, right? What makes you different? Because this is what I'm always asking as a sociologist, right? Like I want to know why Abdullah here is much more likely to cheat in Social 19 than his grandfather, either of his two grandfathers or grandmothers would have been if I had taught them 40, like what is going on? And this is what I want to know as a sociologist, right? I'm always asking these questions, like what is it? And so I don't think it's about religion, by the way. I think it's about culture. So something is happening in the culture that makes it somehow okay for you to make that decision that would not have been okay for them.
I agree somewhat with your point, but in general, our culture is based on our religion, and
Yeah,
we go by the teaching of Islam.
yeah.
And for my parents and grandparents' generation, they used to be more conservative,
Yeah,
and more religious than us right now.
then you
and,
all are.
And then us, which is kind of related to how we interacted with other people in general.
Yeah,
So the main reason for the high percent of cheating is, in general, how related to our religion we are.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And the moral code that we follow.
Okay.
And how we strict.
Or that you don't follow. In this case, that you don't follow. Or you follow selectively.
Yeah, selective one.
Because you didn't eat ants, because that's haram, but, cheating's all right.
Not necessarily.
Well, it's not, but it is. More
It is a
so
sin.
for
It
you
is a
than
sin.
for your
It's a
grandparents.
sin. It's a sin.
It still is a sin, but it's a
still
sin you turn
sin.
away from.
Yeah, we're So basically, we're trying. Most of us, we're trying to get away from any sin in general and follow the moral codes of Islam. Since Islam is not just a religion, it's a way of life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, dude. Okay, I hear you. That's very well stated. In terms of cheating, though, it's actually really simple. Just don't cheat.
Yeah.
In my class.
Yeah, just don't cheat.
All right, I got you. Tay, do you want to come up? And wait, do you want to? You're going to be joined up here by a few. So, do you want to sit up here? You want to stand? Yeah. All right. Hey, can you introduce yourself? Yeah.
My name's Ari, and I'm a senior. I'm from Chicago.
From Chicago. What's your ancestry?
I'm Chinese and Korean.
Chinese and Korean?
Yeah, so I'm Dina. I'm a second-year PhD student, and I'm from the capital city of Iran, Tehran.
And Dina, you just showed up today to sit in on the class.
Yeah.
And you asked me if you could sit in.
Yeah.
Because did you used to watch the class? You watched the class online?
Yeah, so I have a lot of American friends, and there are lots of times that political and sociological conversations come up, and I've noticed that I have a lot of trouble understanding their perspective, especially like the first lecture that I watched on your class was the one that you had like black students here, and like with everything that's going on in my experience, I have a lot of trouble meeting my Black American friends halfway, because
Yeah.
when they say they're oppressed, to me it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, as an
Because
Iranian woman.
Yeah, as an Iranian woman,
Yeah,
it doesn't
yeah,
make
yeah.
sense to me. And so after hearing the arguments in this class, I think I can understand where they're coming from.
Cool.
And so that sort of led me to watch the rest of your lectures, and so, you know,
And here
the
you are.
schedule aligns. Yeah.
Okay, so Ari, we're going to come to you in a second. So I asked you. So Iran's pretty Muslim country. You get how much do students cheat in Iran? So again, hang on, I'm interrupting you. So think about the groups. Think about this, right? Think about me as a sociologist. I'm trying to understand what's behind this, right? Yeah.
So it very much depends, because basically the idea is that from a very young age in Iran, the idea is that if you want to be successful in life, like if you want to achieve anything in life, then you achieve that through having a good education. And education is, like, good education is free. Even the best colleges in Iran are free. So the idea is that if you work hard and if you learn well, then you get into those like elite schools, and then you get into elite colleges, and you'll have a successful career. So if you're cheating, then yes, you're getting through school, but you're not actually learning. And especially when you get to the college entrance exam, you're not able to cheat, so it's not going to get you any further than that. And so basically, the students who don't particularly care about school or education and don't really look forward to that sort of advertised future, they are more likely to cheat than the people who are in the more elite educational groups and
So,
make it to
like
those
you.
institutions. Yeah.
So people who are more elevated,
Yeah,
they don't cheat. So cheating's rare.
Yeah, cheating amongst like the circles of good students who have a high GPA, regardless of their background, it's not frequent at all. Even if they have the option, like they have no supervision, they will just not cheat, compared to students who have like they are from the circles of like schools and institutions where they don't particularly care about like the education.
Okay. So now I have a question for you. So, bro, Chinese students cheat a lot. Okay. In fact, so Arabs, you're off the hook here, right? Chinese students, there are a lot of programs in the U.S. You're American, but because you're connected to Korea and China, I'm going to ask you about your experience here. There are a lot of programs that a lot of people I talk to here, we don't even admit Chinese graduate students, right? Because you can't even admit anybody. Like they stopped at a certain point. There were some programs that just kind of stopped because the people would score really high on these English, on the TOEFL exam, and they get over it, they couldn't even put a sentence together, all sorts of stuff. There were all these just incredible ways in which Chinese students were just cheating, right? It's just rampant. What do you know about, what's your experience as a Chinese Korean American in cheating? What have you learned? What do you know?
I know that a lot of Chinese and Korean kids, they do cheat, and it's because there's a lot of pressure to be successful. And success, as long as it's obtained, that's all that matters, I think.
The higher, the greater the amount of pressure, the more likely one is to cheat.
Yeah, like my mom or my grandma. So I'm the one that said I was adopted, but it's my grandma adopted me. And she came here, she's a first-generation immigrant, and she didn't speak English, but she got into college, and she cheated her whole English class.
Right.
But I think her teacher knew, because she would steal, like, excerpts from, like, magazines and stuff and put it all together. But, like, in history and math, she was a straight-A student, and then she got a C in English.
Yeah. So what did you learn about? What did you learn, like, from her, like, from, like, this culture, right?
I mean, so I was born and raised here. My mom is very Americanized now, if you will. I grew up having tutors and things like that, so I didn't really feel a need to cheat. In college, I'm not gonna lie, like we all cheat. If it's online, and it's fair game, I think, if it's a test. But
Hang on. Is your grandma?
it's my grandma.
Your grandma?
Yeah.
She's still alive?
Yeah, I live with her. She's
Dude.
probably watching.
Grandma,
My mom.
she doesn't cheat, really. Okay.
No, I don't
Well,
cheat.
She's just saying that so that other students feel better about themselves.
I promise, Mom, you're paying good money for my education.
Yeah. So, okay, a little bit of cheating. All right.
Maybe.
Okay, so bro, so here's a question then. When I think about students, other students from other cultures, right? When I think about you, you have a lot of pressure on you.
Honestly, kind of, yeah. But
You have a full scholarship.
yes,
You have to keep a certain GPA.
yes, yes.
And if you don't keep the GPA,
they're giving me a warning and some kind of a procedure.
and then you go back home
Yes.
if you can't cut it.
Yes, but I want to mention something. You know, most of scholarship and universities in Saudi Arabia are kind of, you're getting it through standardized tests, and we have to.
Wait, hang on. Yo.
Rather
ahead.
than having college essays or having kind of college entrance exams, we have standardized tests that kind of summarize your whole high school
Yeah.
to enter universities, and public universities, private universities, and landing any scholarship in the country in general.
Got you. There's a lot of
Yeah.
there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. So
So what I hear, and I think this is a little bit different for you. I want you to weigh in on it. But what we know in China and Korea is there's so much pressure to compete and to be the very best at the very top that the opportunities to cheat just become much more available because it's like, look, I have to do, like, the stress of failing is so great. Where it never was for me because it didn't matter for me. How is that not happening in Iran?
So as in the pressure to like succeed.
Yeah. Like, why doesn't that lead to more cheating?
Well, because again, we have the university entrance exam, and it's a standardized exam. So we have 4 majors. When you enter your high school level, you choose a major.
Yeah.
And then there's one day every single year that every student in the country at
Yeah.
the same time sits down and take an exam. And in that exam, you cannot cheat.
Okay, but that's true in
So-
China. It's true in
Yeah.
Korea.
So
it's
what
true.
happens is that after you're done with that exam, everyone will ask for your rank. So you rank from, let's say there is 1,600 students competing in the major of humanities, which was my major. And you get ranked from number 1 in the country to 1,600,000. And if you've been cheating, then you're going to rank maybe like 30,000, and you don't want that to happen because if you've been an elite for your entire 12 years and then that happens in your entrance exam, then it's shame on your family and on your entire education history. So you don't want that to happen, so you study.
So you study. Okay,
Yeah.
so here's a question then for you, right? Yeah, okay, so here's a question. The reason, by the way, I brought up with your grandparents, that's not true in the United States. Right? Like cheating, we have a different culture here. The culture here, cheating is just much more acceptable in the United States. But what I'm saying about like your culture is it has not been acceptable. It has just never been okay until very recently. Whereas in the U.S. with Americans, it's like, yeah, well, cheating, okay. It's not seen as haram.
honestly, and still, it's not okay in Saudi Arabia.
No, I know it's not
Yeah.
okay, but still it happens. It
Still
happens, right?
Yeah.
And here, I expect it to happen. Like you like as an American, as being Americanized as you are, I expect cheating. It's like, yeah, well, Americans, because we have a different view, a different way of seeing it. Whereas historically speaking, you didn't. So my question for you is, what do you think about that, about what I just said? Like going back to your high school and stuff, like what do you, like the Americanized part of?
Well, in high school, I don't know if maybe my situation's a little different. I was a dancer, so I was practicing, a lot of hours a week. So to get by, I kind of had to, to like pass and stuff.
Which is the common general is justification. that
Yeah, I
people
guess
make.
it is a justification, but I probably wouldn't have passed like high school had I not. I was in a dance studio like
Okay, but
40 to 50
but then
hours a
you,
week.
right? Okay, but then we're going to go back to this other thing. But then you didn't have to come to Penn State. You could have gone to some other school. You could have just been like, okay, whatever. It wouldn't have mattered,
Yeah, I mean, it mattered to me.
as it matters to everybody.
Yeah, I wanted to go to college. My mom went to Cornell, so I went to Penn State.
Okay, all right. This
Not
is the
compatible,
justification,
but-
right,
yeah.
bro? That's justification. This is
We
how
have a question.
Americans
I think
do
we
it,
have a
by the
question,
way.
yeah. We have a question.
Yeah. Wait, hang on. Wait. You have a question, dude? This guy. I don't want to take your question, man. All right, listen, man. Hold on. So one of the things that happens here is that we all come up with some reason, right? So what I'm most fascinated by as a sociologist are the different ways in which people reason and rationalize the kinds of things we do. And what you just said is very typical of an American, right? And, you're wrestling with this, right? And you should wrestle because in your culture, this is really a very complex thing. And it's fascinating hearing from your perspective, right? About family shame. Hey,
Yeah, you'll have to live with that shame until the day you die, because believe it or not, people are still reminding me of my high school diploma GPA, and it's been 8 years.
whoa, seriously?
Yes.
Dude, this is why I love Iranians, man. You guys. Hey, thanks a lot, you guys. Yeah.